Yeah, I don't think Texas Motor Speedway is the only thing we should blame on this. Hey race fans, it's Taylor, and welcome back to Above the Yellow Line, the show where we talk all about the NASCAR Cup Series. There's a lot of talking points from Texas, a lot that are probably negative. I want to try to sprinkle some positives in there too, but I know we all love to hate on Texas Motor Speedway. I mean, just being blunt, I don't really like the track. I know a lot of you don't either, but there are some things that we have to look at that we cannot blame the track specifically for. That being tire issues, some spin outs. I mean, there's a lot to discuss, a lot that we've heard from NASCAR officials, the drivers themselves, a lot of drama, also a new Hamlin rivalry we got to talk about. But before we get into all the negatives and maybe some more positives, let's get to an absolute positive, talking about our winner for the Texas race. Fun fact about me, my favorite show is Survivor, and the slogan for that show was Outwit, Outplay, and Outlast, and in order to win at Texas, you had to do a little bit of all of those, talking about all the tire issues, some strategy play going into that. Tyler Reddick was not somebody I thought was going to win early on in the race after a few issues and some weird strategy calls, but it ended up working out for him in the end. He captured his third win of the season with Richard Childress Racing, which is ironic considering, all the drama surrounding that, Kyle Busch moving to the 8 car next season and Tyler Reddick going to a different car at RCR. There's a lot of just interesting feelings going into this win, but nevertheless, congrats for Tyler Reddick and that 8 crew on a well-deserved win of outwitting, outplaying, and outlasting his opponents. Now let's look at the rest of your top 10 and the rest of the playoff opponents, seeing how they did this race. In the second position, Joey Logano, very strong all race long. He was in and out of contention for the win, just didn't have enough to get there at the end of the race. In third place, we had Justin Haley, tying his best finish this season from earlier this year at Darlington. Fourth, Ryan Blaney. And fifth is Chase Briscoe, and actually we're going to tie in our Shaq Eye Gear MVP of the week to this right here. I'm going to have to say that Chase Briscoe is my MVP of the week because he had like a 20th place car all day long, was not making progress, then suddenly like in the last 30 laps of the race, like 40, 50 laps, his car came to life, and a part of me thinks that might have been with the track cooling off a little bit, his car was able to handle it better, but not just the car. Chase Briscoe was able to bounce back himself, getting into that top 5 position. Very, very impressive from him, and also really saved his playoff hopes. We'll look at the points a little bit later, but he is not as bad as the rest of the guys under the playoff position. So congrats to Chase Briscoe for being this week's Shaq Eye Gear MVP. Moving on to Eric Jones in the 6th position. I knew he would do well this weekend at Texas, so I am glad he finished inside the top 10. 7th, William Byron. 8th, Brad Keselowski. 9th, Kyle Larson. And 10th, Denny Hamlin. We're going to pause here for a minute. We have some drama to talk about and some questions that we could have answered, couldn't have answered, and also some bigger issues involving this incident between Denny Hamlin and William Byron. This is how it all started. So on a restart, Denny Hamlin kind of squeezed William Byron. They made contact. Clearly, Byron was not happy about this because on a caution involving Martin Truex Jr., where he lost a tire, Byron actually nudged the back bumper of Hamlin, put him into the grass, spinning him out. Hamlin thought he could keep his position. NASCAR didn't like that. Denny Hamlin was like, whoa, NASCAR, why are you not penalizing William Byron? He did this to me under caution. More on that in a second. After this incident, they went back on the track to try to start lining up again. Denny Hamlin tried to not wreck out William Byron, but he definitely showed his displeasure by tapping his back bumper, and then he was sent to the back of the pack because he was not able to keep his position after spinning out. Here's the kicker to this incident, and I'll go into my opinions obviously, but Scott Miller said that nobody in NASCAR caught this incident. That is why there was no penalty. Denny Hamlin, clearly frustrated, tweeting the following, saying, "They missed it? What an effing joke. It played on screen 5 times during caution." Going back to Scott Miller's comments, he said a penalty for Byron is still possible, but they did not catch the incident because they were so focused on that caution. I gotta agree with Denny Hamlin here. There is no way in crap you miss an incident like that, especially like he said, when it's played over and over and over, and then there's a fan reaction. You could hear the fans screaming their heads off when Denny Hamlin got to the bumper of William Byron to show his personal retaliation. I don't know if it's like hiring more people to be around the track to catch these things. I'm not sure how all the eyes in the tower are missing that incident, especially when our commentators that are in the booth doing the play-by-play of the race are catching it themselves. So I don't know where that miss is, but I do think that William Byron should be penalized by this. It's under caution. That's a big no-no. He also admitted to it after the race. Denny Hamlin, though, also admitted to retaliating on track during caution after the race. So and they might cancel each other out considering that they both kind of did the same thing. However, William Byron's impact on Hamlin did cause him to spin out under a caution, so I think his is a little bit more severe. However, if we are looking at penalties, this is something that Nate caught on Twitter. You will see on your screen. Ty Dillon leaves his pit stall, nudges into Ty Gibbs. Ty Gibbs clearly not happy about that, nudges back into Ty Dillon. The force of that impact was a lot greater than what Ty Dillon gave to Ty Gibbs. And as you also saw, there were pit crew members in pit lane. They weren't behind the wall. They were attending service to a car. NASCAR officials looking at that service to the car. And Ty Gibbs slammed Ty Dillon almost into them. For me, that's a big no-no. For me, somebody who's going to be in the Cup Series most likely next year should not be doing that. It's very immature. It's very unsafe. So if anything, NASCAR needs to review that too, because it got a lot of likes, a lot of attention on Twitter, and that needs to be given a penalty. For me personally, he has to learn respect on the track, respect on pit road, and just playing safety. If we're having so many safety issues in general with things that aren't caused by just malicious intent, then we see that. Not saying that it was malicious intent, but it was clear that Ty Gibbs made impact with Ty Dillon after all this just stuff happening. Again, I wasn't in the helmet, I wasn't in the car, I don't know. But there needs to be a penalty for that too, so I'm hoping NASCAR does take a look at that as they're reviewing the footage for the Byron and Hamlin incident. Looking back at our results, we have Daniel Suarez in 12th, Chastain in 13th, Cindric 15th, and Bowman 29th. Then looking at our guys that did not finish this race, we have Chase Elliott in 32nd, and in my opinion, he had one of the most quotable weekends of the year. When asked about the tire issues on track for the other drivers still in the race, he said, "I hope nobody gets hurt, but otherwise, I don't care." He's reached that point. I feel like, though, he needs to be a bit more vocal as the face of the sport, in my opinion, about these issues and his real opinions on it. I mean, obviously showing some frustration there with his post-race comments, but for me, that was a personal it made my heart a little happy to see him getting a little frustrated as well and kind of showing it on camera. You could tell that he was probably restraining himself a little bit, but I do love that comment. Unfortunately, though, for Chase Elliott, it is another start to the round in the playoffs where he is having to dig himself out of a bit of a hole. He's not under the playoff cutoff line just yet. We'll talk about that in a few moments when we look at our points. But again, not a good start to the playoff round of 12 for Chase Elliott, kind of following what happened in the round of 16. Then we have Kyle Busch in 36th. He had a tire issue, wrecked out, wasn't able to finish the race. Same thing happened to Christopher Bell, who finished in 34th. Another tire issue. Same thing for their teammate Martin Truex Jr., who had a tire issue, not in the playoffs though, but a notable DNF to mention that was due to a tire. And then another DNF we have to mention is Cody Ware finishing in the 33rd position, because this is pretty significant and it caused a lot of us to hopefully wake up and really take these safety issues seriously. On lap 172, it appeared that Cody Ware's car started to get loose and ran into the wall. After he hit the wall in turn 4, he ended up going to pit lane actually and slamming one of the walls. I believe it was right by Alex Bowman's pit crew. Thankfully, nobody on pit road was injured, and luckily Cody Ware appears to be okay. Bob Hockrass tweeted this about his condition, saying there are no broken bones and no concussion for Cody Ware, who underwent x-rays in the care center and has been released. Some ankle discomfort. Team manager Robbie Benton feels like he should be okay to drive next week, but will need NASCAR's approval. Very scary incident for Cody Ware, and hopefully he is fine to go to Talladega, but it really should serve as a wake-up call, one of the 5 wake-up calls that we've seen this season to make this car safer. Obviously, though, we have to talk about the elephant in the room. These issues do not get changed overnight, and unfortunately, probably NASCAR won't be able to review these issues as much as they should be until we're not racing anymore, until there's an off-season. So these changes might not happen until the off-season, as they're going to have to take a really close look at these cars, which is unfortunate because we're heading to Talladega this coming week. And that track, a super speedway track where we see crazy wrecks, is really not safe given what we've seen with these cars. So personally for me, and I know if I was a driver, I would be scared to death going to Talladega. And this leads us to go down the line talking about key moments from the race, because there are a lot to talk about. But specifically with the Cody Ware incident, we got to bring tires into this question. We're not sure what necessarily caused the Cody Ware incident, but tires could be one of those things. Greg Strucker of Goodyear mentioned in a comment post-race that, tires could be an issue, but he kind of placed blame, at least in my opinion of what I saw on this video, on the teams messing with the PSI. I know earlier in the season we had the same issue when Goodyear released a statement stating, hey, this is what we recommend for the teams PSI-wise, between this limit and this limit. If teams go over or under, we might see some tire issues. He said that teams are probably pushing the limit, which is leading to these tire issues. This made some drivers a little frustrated on Twitter. Denny Hamlin, one of them, and he was very vocal post-race. He said, quote, "If you're thinking that maybe NASCAR will look into someone else for tires, keep dreaming. Goodyear pays them a fat check so they are allowed to gouge the teams each week." Richard Childress also went on to comment about the issues at Texas Motor Speedway that we saw this weekend. I'll have his comments on the screen so you can pause and read it, but to sum everything up, he said that the problem is not necessarily the tires, kind of counterintuitive to what Denny Hamlin was saying. He said that the issue, though, was with the shock limiter rule, saying that the teams would not be running the tires lower if they could get the cars lower in the back and the diffuser to its optimal downforce point. So for me, I like his tweets because they offer constructive feedback and a possible solution if NASCAR is willing to look into it. I think something else we saw at play here this weekend was the heat, not only for the fans, for me. I mean, every time we saw shots of the stands, things were pretty empty, and I know a lot of that probably has to do with just the time of the year that the race is. Maybe people just don't like the product at Texas Motor Speedway, which is valid, but I also think that the heat had something to do with it. If we remember last year, the issue that fans had at the tracks not being able to bring in their own water, not being able to bring in coolers, affecting the races at Texas, I wouldn't want to come back as a fan either, knowing that this was going to be a really hot race in the middle of the day. I've brought this up before, but a summer series at night would be fantastic for NASCAR if the TV rights allowed it. I know it's officially not really summer anymore, but this still applies when we have weather in the upper 90s at Texas Motor Speedway in September in the middle of the afternoon. So an idea for NASCAR to look at if they want to look at it, but I think it'd be a good idea for the fans and the drivers. But we did see heat affecting these cars, and we kind of know they're not really made for heat. Early issues in testing was that the cars would overheat in general, so when we add heat to it already, there's going to be some issues. Some drivers actually had electrical issues in the cars. Some of the dash numbers weren't showing. Denny Hamlin actually wasn't able to get lap times for part of the race because of this issue, I heard on their radio. So a lot of issues this weekend. All this to say, listen, I know that we can't really blame Texas Motor Speedway for everything. Issue in point, the tires, some officiating issues, etc. You name it, we got the issues this weekend. But I also know that drivers are being really persistent on Texas having a total overhaul. A lot of drivers before the race this weekend in their press conferences said, hey, Texas Motor Speedway needs to be demolished, reconfigured, something totally different. Kyle Larson was one of those who was very talkative about this issue during his press conference. There's also been some issues saying the Texas Motor Speedway is going to be configured into an Atlanta-type track, which I personally think is a bad idea. Ratings-wise, though, a good idea because I do like the new product at Atlanta. I really do. But we don't need more super speedway races. That needs to be done. Give me a good mile-and-a-half track. Give me a good short track. Anything but what we're having right now. Unfortunately, though, a total overhaul of the track I think is impossible because we saw that they were making updates to Texas Motor Speedway's concession stands. You want to totally reconstruct concession stands if you weren't going to keep the track. So unfortunate for those who are dreaming about a new Texas Motor Speedway. I don't think we're going to get it, but obviously with Texas Motor Speedway losing a race next season, I think this is getting them a wake-up call that they need, that, hey, something needs to be fixed. All that to say, let's look at your points before we get into more talking points for the weekend, starting with the ATYL point standings. I actually picked the winner this weekend. I'm pretty shocked, but I'm also very excited about it. This got me back in contention for the lead. I'm 4 points behind, though, Dom, who has the lead with 78 points. In last place, we have Rob with 67 points, but he is catching up to all of us after a late start to the season. Now, looking at our drivers' playoff grid, here's what we have now. Joey Logano leading the playoff standings, 30 points to the good. Behind him is Chastain, Byron, Larson, Blaney, Hamlin, Suarez, moving himself up from below the line. Then Chase Elliott in 8th. He's on danger of moving below going into Talladega, which is not what you want. Then, of course, our MVP, Chase Briscoe, -4 to the good. Then Cindric -11. 11th, Christopher Bell. And finally, with our LVP of the week, 12th in the playoff standings, I gotta give this to Alex Bowman. He came into this weekend -6. He leaves this weekend at -30. For me, I thought he was somebody who was going to be able to get himself actually above the cutoff line this weekend and kind of be a surprise going into the round of 8. Unfortunately, that is not the case, and Alex Bowman is my LVP this week. Now it's time to go into our race ratings to close things out above or below the yellow line. Here is what you all had to say on a Twitter poll. And one of the most drastic polls we have ever had on the channel. Only 4% of you said this was a great race. 9% said good, 20% said okay, and 67% said bad. On YouTube, you all kind of shared the same thoughts. 7% said great, 9% said good, 16% said okay, and 69% said bad. There were a lot of comments about this race, starting off with Alex, who said this was the worst race of the season. Another Alex West, said the racing and the Denny Byron drama was good, but the tire problems made it horrendous. Rooting for the 9 cents 85 shared the same sentiment that the drivers had, saying the track needs to be bulldozed. And finally, thoughts from our own Adam Lucas. He said, a long, strange journey, man. I think a lot of people are glad it's over. Many issues plagued this race, from the super slick track surface to the poor tire wear. I never thought that being the leader would be a disadvantage in a race. This is just another black eye for the folks at Texas Motor Speedway. I think I'll just give this race participation points at a 10 out of 100, making it way below the yellow line. I've aired out my grievances with this race, and I will say, if it wasn't for all the tire issues and all the drama, I actually think we would have had a decent race at Texas Motor Speedway. We saw a lot of great battles. One I'm thinking of is between, I think it was Larson, Logano, and Reddick or something like that. I think it was actually Hamlin for the lead pretty early on in the race. A lot of the restarts that we had were really exciting. I know that's a product of restarts, but even then, when we had battles for the lead, they were really, really good. Unfortunately, though, that was pretty muddled down by all of the issues that we had on Sunday at Texas. Another thing to note, just because we lost an actual date for Texas on the schedule the past 2 years because of the All-Star race, does not mean that we need another 100 miles taped onto this race. This race, for me, was 200 miles too long, in my opinion. I know that would make it 300 miles, but besides the point, this race was a long one. I know that there was a rain delay involved or a lightning delay involved that lasted about an hour, but when a normal race in the season that is not the 600 goes over 5 hours on its own, that's a problem for me. So I think we really need to take a look at what we're thinking about here for 2023, mostly, I guess, just beyond talking about this track and what needs to happen. But after this weekend, I am hoping that we can stop pointing fingers, stop playing the blame game, own up to our mistakes, and make this racing product and this car better for not just the fans. If you can't do it for the fans, do it for your drivers that are yelling week after week for safety changes, tire changes, all the above. For me, this week, this race is below the yellow line. I gotta give it a 35%. All right, let's take a deep breath. Hopefully next week is better. I know it's Talladega. I know that there is some pressure going into that race and some safety concerns as well. So we'll take a deep breath together going into this race weekend. But what do you think about all the drama, Denny Hamlin versus Byron? What are your thoughts about this tire issue? Let me know in the comments below. And with that, we are done with this episode of Above the Yellow Line, the show where we talk all about the NASCAR Cup Series. We will have a live stream this Thursday night on the TobyChristieCom YouTube and Facebook pages. So make sure to tune into that. It will be at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So make sure you watch that. We'll talk about Texas. We'll also probably do some trivia. Don't quote me on that, but I'm excited for this live stream as we have a lot to talk about. So to tune into that and to make sure you know when we post, make sure to follow our social pages on Twitter @_TaylorKitchen_ for post-race polls and daily questions, and Above the Yellow Line on Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Also, make sure to check out TobyChristieCom on all social platforms to find great motorsports content, and TobyChristie.com to hear and read more from the teams and your favorite drivers. Last but not least, I want to thank Shaq Eye Gear for supporting ATYL and TobyChristie.com. To show your support, make sure to use the promo code MAMBA34, MAMBA34, to get 20% off your order of Shaq Eye Gear glasses. You can find all of those pages and our merch pages if you like this shirt, linked in the description below. But before you check those out, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, share this with your friends and family, and guys, thank you so much for supporting us here at Above the Yellow Line and TobyChristie.com. And until next time, I'll see ya.